Well, welcome to class number 5 of our 10-part series on creation and evolution. At the rate we're going, it's going to take a long time to cover all the material. We left off last time talking about the age of the earth. And that's what we're going to talk about for the next few sessions, actually. How old is the earth? It is a key component in, I think, in the creation-evolution controversy. The testimony of Jesus in Matthew 19:4 was that the creation of Adam was the beginning. Now, you'll find many scoffers today will say, well, the ancient people talked about the earth being 6,000 years old because they didn't know any better. What are they trying to imply by stuff like that? We're smart, they're dumb, right? Had a question-answer session at the church I was at a couple nights ago. Where was I? Wisconsin. This one, we had people lined up at the microphone to ask questions. And this one scoffer was there. His professor was sitting out in the crowd, sending the student up to ask questions. And I would be sweet and kind, but I'd just, blow the student out of the water, as my answers. And he'd go back, and the professor would put his arm around him, and, you should have said this. Well, professor, why don't you get up here, you coward? If you got something to say, come ask me a question. But see, that way he can maintain his composure by sending the students out to be sacrificed and not have to do it himself. But the students kept making statements like, well, the average person in this room probably doesn't understand what the complexities of science. I said, hold it. Folks, let me translate that for you. What he's saying is, he's smart, you're dumb. He said, that's not what I meant. I said, how many of you took it like that? Nearly every hand went up. It's exactly what they mean. And when Jesus said the creation of Adam was the beginning, a common response you will get, people will say, well, the ancient people were just trying to explain the world to a bunch of ignorant shepherds. They phrase it slightly differently, but it all boils down to the same thing. We're smart, everybody else is dumb. In other words, if you don't believe like us, if you don't believe evolution, you're not smart. And that attitude reeks off of some of these guys. I mean, you got to really watch for that. So Jesus said pretty clearly the creation of Adam was the beginning. Here the textbooks are teaching the earth is literally billions and billions of years old. And they'll say the universe is older than that. All through the books you see the phrase, millions of years ago, billions of years ago. I mean, the books are full of this in this county. I mean, in the Bible Belt. Every place I go, they claim to be the buckle on the Bible Belt. I've always wondered where it really is, We've even got some Christians going around teaching the earth is billions of years old. Hugh Ross has a large ministry called Reasons to Believe. He is one of the key leaders today of the movement among Christians saying the earth is billions of years old. And I don't know if I got all of his books, got quite a few of his books. I toured his ministry a few weeks ago when I was out in Southern California. He teaches the earth is billions and billions of years old, and God had to have billions of years in order to get us here. Well, the God that I worship, number one, he doesn't need billions of years to do anything. He can do it in no time at all. Secondly, he certainly doesn't need to practice. He can do it right first time. He doesn't need to throw some material out there and let's see what happens to it. He doesn't need billions of years to prepare anything for anything else. He just, poof, creates it. So, the earth is not billions of years old. Now, who cares about this topic anyway? Let me tell you the importance of this. I think it's extremely important. The credibility of Jesus is certainly at stake. The credibility of the book of Genesis is certainly at stake. Genesis teaches very clearly, if you add up the dates, that the earth is about 6,000 years old. And Jesus quoted from Genesis 25 times. Apparently, he believed in it. If you want to get a fascinating chart, and there's too many pages to make a bunch of copies of for tonight, but in the back of the Defender's Bible by Henry Morris is a chart showing all of the New Testament references and Old Testament references that refer back to Genesis. There are 200 New Testament references referring back to the book of Genesis. It's very neat to read all these passages in here if you want to get this chart at page 1550-something here in the Defender's Bible. But 1556. Nearly every other book in the Bible refers back to Genesis. I think there's maybe 2 exceptions that do not refer to Genesis. So this topic, I think, of the age of the earth is, and Satan knows this, of course, this is the way to undercut the entire Bible. You destroy the credibility in Genesis, and you might as well throw the rest of the Bible away. And the scoffers certainly know this too. Now, a fourth reason, the evolutionists care about this topic, because if the earth is not billions of years old, the whole theory of evolution looks awful silly. Doesn't it? I mean, think about it. If I say, if you kiss this frog, it'll turn into a prince. That's obviously a fairy tale, right? But if I tell you the frog can turn into the prince slowly, somehow the human brain can accept that. And that's precisely what evolution is teaching. The frog turned to the prince, but it happens slowly. It's still a fairy tale. But see, the evolutionists will fight tooth and claw over this issue about the age of the earth because this is the first hurdle to have to overcome. In order for evolution to be true, zillions of things have to be true also, and this is the first obstacle they face. How old is the earth? I was asked to go speak at this church in Iowa one time, and a lady came to the meeting, and she said, Brother Hovind, my husband's an atheist. Would you please talk to him? I said, I'll be glad to. I went over to the house the next day, sat on the couch, and he sat on the chair, and we talked for 2 hours. All we talked about was the age of the earth. Didn't talk about the Bible, just talked about how old is this earth anyway. The guy was an engineer of some type, I forget now, very smart man. After 2 hours of what I'm about to share with you, information that proves the earth is not billions of years old, after 2 hours he looked at me and said, wait a minute, you know the earth is only a few thousand years old, you're right. But he said, that means it had to be created, doesn't it? I said, yes sir, and that's really what I came to talk to you about. But it took me 2 hours to get there. Of course it had to be created. But see, sometimes you have to go through lay the groundwork before you can reach them with the gospel. And I think the age of the earth is a critical place to start. Tonight we're going to begin with some scientific ways to show the age of the earth. I think it's pretty obvious from Scripture the earth is about 6,000 years old. But what about science? What does the world itself teach us about its age? There are several ways you can approach this, and I try to give people evidence from space, evidence from physical things on earth, and evidence from living things on earth. Kind of the three categories I put my evidences into. I start off with one that everybody can understand, that is the population of the earth. This article, July 99, says, last weekend the world's population topped 6 billion. Now 6 billion is a lot of people. You'll find, if you look back in the 1999 newspapers, you'll find about 8 or 9 different dates where they claim this happened. You know, nobody knows for sure when the earth got 6 billion people, obviously. National Geographic said it happened in October. This one says July. It doesn't matter. The fact is there's probably about 6 billion people on the planet. In 1985, there were 5 billion people on the planet. I went to the University of West Florida and got several books. I forget the name of the one, Population, Encyclopedia of Population, I think was the name of it, at the University of West Florida. But any good library will have books about population. That's what they deal with. How many people are here? How fast is the population growing? It's all statistics from different countries around the world. And everybody agrees that somewhere in 1985, the world crossed over the 5 billion mark in population. Back in 1800, there was only 1 billion people on the planet. Now think about that. The population has increased 6 times in the last 200 years. If we continue that rate for 200 more years, 600% increase will be a lot of people. The price of property will go way up, right? Now, especially when you stop and consider, only 3% of the Earth's surface is livable. 70% is underwater, for one thing. A whole bunch of it's under ice or desert. I mean, Sahara Desert is huge, much larger than America. Fly out west, and you'll see how much property just is wasted real estate, basically. You couldn't live there. 3% of the population, 3% of the planet is considered to be livable for humans. If before the flood came and it was destroyed, if the pre-flood world was, say, 80% livable, plus you've got much better atmospheric conditions, which we'll get into later when we get into what's on my video number 2 about the Garden of Eden. If you have much more plant life growing and higher oxygen concentration, you can get a more dense population with plenty of food. The earth was truly built to be inhabited, like the Bible says. I think it's in the book of Psalms. God created it to be inhabited. It could have held a population of hundreds of billions. No problem. This is a huge place. But this Merrill Earth Science textbook, 93 edition, shows the kids that there was about 1 billion in 1810. People argue about when it happened, but roughly around the turn of that century, we crossed over the 1 billion mark. Now they're saying the earth is overcrowded. Here's National Geographic, October 99, and it says on October 12th, the 6 billionth person is going to be born. Like I said, I go back to 99, you'll find a lot of arguments of when this happened. But somewhere in 99, we probably crossed over the 6 billion mark. Now, this issue of the population of the earth was a great motivator for Charles Darwin. I want to pass out this sheet to you here. Everybody take one of these and pass it on down. This is a copy of some of the pages from Henry Morris's book, The Long War Against God. If you want some great supplemental reading, Did we ever order this one to add to our catalog? We should, Dan. This is awesome. You can get it through our ministry. I read this years ago when I just was getting into the creation movement, and this book had a very profound influence on me. He lays out the history of evolutionary thought. Now, I feel like he kind of went backwards. He starts with the present. You know, who's teaching evolution now? More. Okay. He starts with the present.